when they manifest, here's what I see happening here, is that as these beings manifest, they are traveling through stargates and wormholes. And in one of the images that I have posted on the Coast site, it's a Tibetan image of the rainbow body. And we see this awakened being, this enlightened being manifesting, and as we look at its neck, it's almost serpentine looking. It has this swirling rainbow energy around it with a gateway surrounding it. And when I began to ponder, and actually it was David Wilcock who affirmed that, hey, this makes a lot of sense, is that it looks like the serpent being description is a primitive interpretation of seeing this luminous or shining stargate behind these people when they first materialize. And this makes more sense to me, certainly, than this possibility that we're talking about some kind of reptilian creatures. Now, I'm not saying that David Icke is wrong or that R.A. Boulay is wrong. I'm saying that there's a possibility that there is this other group of perhaps crocodile-nosed tall beings. But when we're actually talking about a reptilian race of winged serpents, flying serpents and dragons, in the ancient world, they're talking about the seraphim. They're talking about the highest order of angels.
Well, that's a good point. Now, these flying creatures have been worldwide legends, haven't they?
Every single tradition from ancient Sumeria to Egypt to India to China has examples of these beings. And in fact, David Icke has a video on his website where he goes through and shows, look, here's Osiris. He's described as a serpent, and he's got ostrich feathers on. And my point is, well, why don't we key on the ostrich feathers and say he's a bird being instead of saying he's a serpent being? He's actually a winged serpent. If he's described as serpentine and he has ostrich feathers, that means he's a hybrid being. He's not just a reptilian being. He is, in fact, a winged serpent. So this is a classic example of how this gets underinterpreted. Perhaps there's a desire on the part of some people to just freak people out and to terrify them and to terrorize them by saying that there's this reptilian race out here that's coming to eat us. But I don't think that that's true at all. And part of what I'm here to do is to kind of say, let's back off that just a little bit, and let's just take a really deeper look at this, because if I drove a Hummer, I could actually drive holes or drive my Hummer through the holes in the research that's been done on these reptilian beings. And I might sound, I'm not trying to sound angry here, I'm just very passionate about this because I'm very concerned that people might in fact be deeply, deeply misled by thinking that these beings are in some way malevolent and they're not here for our highest interest.
I guess because they look that way. They don't look friendly, do they?
Well, in the case of the rainbow body, they do appear to be friendly. In other instances, they are portrayed as half human and half serpent. A classic example of this is the Sumerian creator god Enki. He's the one who's credited with crafting the human body, of altering it. When you see depictions of him, he's portrayed as a spirit, specifically a water spirit, and he's shown as half human and half serpent. There is something within us that has been programmed to, perhaps coming from the reptilian brain, to fear beings that are half human and half serpent. But in fact, virtually all of the God beings, including Jesus, have been connected with the serpent. Moses describes lifting the serpent of healing, or the fiery serpent, which by definition is a seraphim. So Moses made a seraphim in the ancient world. And then later, Jesus directly connected himself with the seraphim, saying, as Moses lifted the serpent in the wilderness, which is actually the seraphim, the fiery serpent, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. So why we fear this is kind of strange to me when you have all of the greatest lawgivers and teachers actually and directly connecting themselves with this being. I think what's ultimately behind this, George, is some kind of we just have to call it a conspiracy. There is a faction that is out there that does not want humankind to transform, that does not want humankind to achieve the next level of our spiritual evolution into light beings. They want to keep us down on the farm, so they freak us out, scaring us with the story of these reptilian beings that if you go anywhere near any of this teaching, you're in some kind of Illuminati plot that is here to kind of eat you for lunch, and that is simply not true.
Should we take the chance?
Well, what we should take the chance and do is really look at the wisdom that is behind this. What are they actually talking about here? Who are these beings, and who has been out there seeking to prevent us from achieving this next level? Part of it, in the tradition of the seraphim, these winged serpents or fiery serpents, they are described as beings of pure light and pure love whose frequency is so high that if a human were to encounter one of these beings, they would run the risk of being incinerated. So that's one reason right there, one benevolent reason for people to teach or for stories to be inserted in the Bible, in the Sumerian tradition and elsewhere, to be mindful of these beings. The serpent of Eden, our friend Mike Heiser, for example, has pointed out that Nakash, the serpent of Eden, is in fact one of these beings, is the bright snake or shining serpent of Eden, is a fiery serpent. That means that the serpent of Eden is not a reptile, is not a reptilian being. The serpent of Eden is a seraphim, one of these highest order of angels. And in fact, in Sitchin's work, he says that the serpent of Eden is in fact Enki, a being who sought to uplift us to the level of the gods and even to help us to exceed the capabilities of the gods and achieve our ultimate transformation into light beings.
The Egyptian lore also has these kinds of beings as well, clearly depicted in sculptures and everything else. Do you think that these are beings that originated from this planet? Were they extraterrestrial? Were they dimensional? Where'd they come from?
Well, they are said, in the case of the seraphim, in these winged serpents, seraphim do appear in Egyptian temple descriptions and even on the throne chair of Tutankhamun. We are told that the seraphim dwell at the throne of God. In fact, in depictions, and I have these in my Soul Rising presentation, you see Jesus holding a seraphim in his hands as he's sitting on his throne. You see him with seraphim on either side of his throne. We are told that the throne of God is some perhaps indeterminable cosmic center, but in my work, I actually localize it based on the evidence that I've turned up in my research in this regard. I localize it into the Milky Way. If we think of our Milky Way galaxy as the throne that is described, as the temple that is described in the ancient texts, then the Holy of Holies, where the throne is located, must be the center of the galaxy. What do you know? Many mystic traditions, shamanic traditions teach that the center of the galaxy is inhabited by millions of transformed humans who are existing in their light form. They teach us that the center of the Milky Way galaxy is the place that our souls came from. So what I propose or hypothesize is, well, what if we play along with this and suggest that the throne of God, the throne of Jesus, is in fact the center of the Milky Way galaxy? This is where the seraphim dwell, and this is where the Mayans say one of these seraphim, the winged serpent, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, will be emerging from in 2012. And
they believe in his return, don't they? Right around.
Yes, they do. They believe in his return. He'll be traveling through a serpent rope, which could be a wormhole, according to John Major Jenkins, and I think he's right. I think that the way that these beings travel is through stargates and wormholes, and when they manifest on the Earth plane, they manifest as five-colored rainbow light, as rainbow beings with this gateway behind them that could be interpreted to a primitive mind, a pre-technological mind, as, in fact, a serpent opening its mouth or a wormhole opening its mouth. We now know it's actually a stargate or a wormhole.
William, was it Quetzalcoatl that is depicted on stone as if he's sitting at the instrument panel of some kind of craft? Is that him?
Yeah, that's Lord Pakal. That's
Pakal.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, he's on the world tree, the sacred tree, the cosmic cross, which is linking heaven and earth, linking earth with the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And I'm really glad you brought that up, George, because one of the other images that's posted on the Coast site is called the Cosmic Cross. And what I show, or what is shown there, is this correspondence between the Mayan image, the Mixtec and Mayan image of two priests on either side of the sacred tree, which represents the 2012 galactic alignment. This tree is T-shaped and it's topped by a bird. To the Mayans, this T-shaped cross symbolizes a portal or a gateway into the spirit world. What I've done is matched it up, for example, with Botticelli's painting of the Crucifixion, which shows John the Baptist on one side, Mary Magdalene on the other side, of Jesus on the exact same T-shaped cross with a similar bird topping it with a portal opened behind him. This is really interesting because it's saying that this imagery is not just isolated to the Mayans. It's in the Christian tradition as well. And not just the Mayans and the Christians talk about this galactic alignment, so do the Egyptians, because on the temple walls of the ancient Temple of Seti at Abydos, we see the exact same scenario depicted. Two priests on either side of a T-shaped cross that symbolizes a portal or a gateway, topped by a bird, symbolic of the bird of heaven, especially the ibis or heron, the bird that symbolizes to the Mayans the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So all three of these depictions are in fact describing this cosmic alignment, 2012, and the opening of a portal or a gateway with beings coming and going through that portal or gateway.
Are they coming via a craft? How
No.
are they getting here? They're not.
Nope. Mayan symbolism suggests they're coming through this umbilical cord called a serpent rope that is likely actually a wormhole. And these beings that are coming and going, in this instance, in the Maya 2012 prophecy, is the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl. The feathered serpent, the term feathered serpent, is the very definition of the Judeo-Christian seraphim angels, these beings who have achieved the next level of human, who have transformed into light beings. So what we're suggesting here is that we're talking about a portal opening and these light beings coming and going from within it.
Well, let's talk, if we can, a little bit about Ezekiel and this wheel. You call it the Merkabah. Tell me about that.
The Merkabah, one of the definitions for that is the throne chariot. I mean, these beings have to travel in something. And so you've got a lot of researchers, especially UFO researchers, that say, oh, this throne chariot, that must be a UFO. That must be some kind of technological craft that these beings are flying around the cosmos in. But in fact, in the esoteric tradition out of which the Merkabah emerges, they're saying, no, the Merkabah is in fact a light vehicle. It is, these figures have transformed themselves into the Merkabah, the space-time light vehicle, and they travel the cosmos as light beings. Ezekiel encountered one of these. Elijah ascended into the heavens in a whirlwind, a vortex that many believe is actually one of these Merkabah vehicles. Jesus appears to have utilized the Merkabah vehicle as well, and certainly the seraphim do too.
In some of the depictions that we see, ancient depictions, there are pictures of craft in the background, William. I mean, you've seen some of these.
Yeah.
You've been to Abydos. You've seen that as well.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Well, some of them could legitimately be called UFOs. Others are explainable. I am not a proponent of the idea that these vastly advanced beings are traveling. I should say this, that all of them are traveling in hard or technological metallic craft. The ones that I'm interested in are those who are traveling